Welcome back to Ana Dialogue, the dialogue on analog music reproduction. In this episode, we're going to focus on high-end audio. A topic that is worrying a lot the audiophile community. Why is this? Because the prices are too damn high. Let's go. In this video, we are going to explore the good and the bad, mostly the bad, of high-end audio. We have a few questions, actually a lot of questions. Why are hi-fi components so expensive? Are we getting what we are paying for? Does expensive mean high-end? Do high prices equal high quality? Let's discover it now. Okay, so let's start. We're going to take a look at the main reasons that create that high cost. And we're going to go through 5 true reasons, because there are true motivations why we have high costs in high-end audio, and other 5 fictitious, I would say, fake almost costs that are being adding to the final price tag of high-end, so-called high-end equipment, hi-fi equipment. Then in the end, I'm gonna give my final take, and also try to discuss with you guys what we can do in order to somehow get a better price tag in the end for our precious hi-fi components. Okay, let's start. Our first point in true high-end costs, I would surely put research and development. Yes, we must admit that in order to create high-quality components, high-quality hi-fi pieces of gear, there must be a long process behind it, especially when we're pushing ahead technology and when we're trying to find new solutions, better solutions. So that process of research and development, where people have to put a lot of time, work, energy, companies have to put a lot of money in order to do some research and then develop different models. You're going to have different types of demos, of beta units, of prototypes. I mean, it's a long process and it costs a lot, undeniable. So that's already hiring the level of the price tag, of the final price tag of a high-end piece of gear, because we must take in consideration a lot of stuff. This is our first point. Let's proceed. Okay, for our second point, we must bear in mind that we're talking mainly, not always, but mainly of handmade components. It's an artisanal type of process of production. These are small companies in, I would say, 90% of cases of high-end audio. So, as you can imagine, something that is made in small batches, just a few elements, just a few units, in most cases on demand. That's why you have to wait for weeks or months sometimes to have your component with you. And they're handmade, patiently done by hand. A lot of the components, not the whole thing, obviously. The electronics are bought. Sometimes they're made in the house, in most cases off a shelf. But a lot of other parts, the software, the circuitry, the different solutions adopted in a high-quality piece of equipment are handmade. They're not mass-produced, and that is very expensive, as you can imagine. Let's proceed. Point number 3, very simple. Luxury materials. In a lot of cases, high-end equipment adopts high-quality material, but unnecessarily. I mean, we don't want true gold knobs. It doesn't matter if it has veneer or high, incredible, or esoteric type of wood on the side of the panels. I mean, yes, it's nice, but that is obviously going to increase a lot the cost, or even incredible amazing things with covers, boxes, handcrafted knobs. That is all going to increase the price tag. And if your objective is to create an elite type of product, then that's the way you want to go, obviously. But we must bear in mind that every little step in that case is increasing that final price tag. Let's proceed. Point number 4. Niche market versus mass market. Something like this already came out in the other points. We're obviously facing something very, very small. We're not talking Pioneer. We're not talking Sony, even though sometimes they do create high-end products. Absolutely. But we're talking about the majority. In most cases, high-quality components, high-end gear is made in, it belongs to a niche market, to a very small type of companies with just a few people inside. It takes a very long time. It takes a lot of resources to do all the steps we said before. So we must bear in mind, obviously, that we're not talking about big companies. Hence, we also have a lower demand, obviously, connected to this type of niche market. So we have very few units, very low demand, and obviously at that point you have to ask for a lot of money in order to cover the expenses, have a profit, and pay all the other expenses connected to the promotion, the marketing, the distribution, as we will see in the next point. So when you're small, everything costs a lot, and that's going to increase the final price tag. Oh, and obviously there's also low sales. You're not selling thousands of units, not even hundreds of units. Maybe sometimes you're selling just a few units or a dozen of units. So obviously that every unit has to count a lot in your budget. It has to pay off a lot. Let's proceed. Okay, our last point number 5. We must take into consideration, especially in consideration of the other points we just mentioned, that these small companies have to face big costs, big expenses for distribution, the final retail. So that's independent from the company. That's the retail, the shop where you're buying it is adding a cost there, a huge cost in most cases. The more something costs, the more they put on top, and not just a little profit, huge profit also for them. You also have to consider importation, which means that in most cases they have to pay custom duties a lot if it's coming from another country, another continent. And in that exchange, as we will see after, there's also a little trick there going on. And plus, obviously, as you can imagine, taxes, their own, the one of the retail, the custom duties. There's so many little expenses hidden that are not equally distributed on a high number of production. Okay, it's a small production, and the expenses are huge. Hence, the price tag is going to go up again and again. Okay, we've seen the main, I think, aspects of true cost related to high-end. Now let's see the ones a little more gray, not completely transparent, not completely true, in my opinion. Let's proceed. Point number 1, I would call it underestimation fear. Unfortunately, we are living in a society where we have a concept where good equals pricey, expensive. So a lot of times, a lot of companies, I'm sure, are adding that little extra $500, $1,000 just to make sure people don't think it's something cheap. Because, as I said, if something is expensive, it must be fantastic. And obviously, as we all know, that is not always true. Actually, very rarely it is true. Let's proceed. Point number 2. Now, this is a very bad point because I want to discuss briefly about snake oil and esoteric gear in general. What do I mean? Well, very simple. In this case, when we're talking about snake oil and esoteric audio, companies are declaring things, technologies, materials as very important, as revolutionary, as incredible. And it's not the case. In most cases, it's not the case. It's not happening. It's not taking place. It's a forgery almost. Maybe they're convinced of what they're saying, but in a lot of cases, this is simply not true. Like, for example, a lot of you have mistaken my appreciation of high quality cables, because I think quality cables do have an impact, but there is absolutely no sense in paying thousands and thousands of euro or dollars or whatever. No way. We're in the range, I think, in hundreds when you're really talking about high quality. Maybe a little more if it's pure silver or gold or things like that. Then there's a material reason. But apart from cables, in general, in a lot of solutions, a lot of gear, there is a little drop here and there of snake oil, where people declare they're using something very fancy, nifty, that took so much research and understanding that had to bring an increase in price. And unfortunately, this is really not the case. I was contacted by a lot of companies a few companies to do some testing of their products. I almost always sent everything back because I did not sense any difference, and they got mad. Okay, let's proceed. Point number 3, exchange. Importation duties and exchange rate of different currencies. Now, this is true, obviously, because I mentioned it before, but there's also somebody playing on this. Because in my last video on the CD transport, here's a link. For example, I made an example of the CEC players that in Japan cost around $1,000, maybe something less. In the US, it's almost $4,000. And people think it's a high-end product at that point, very high-end. Well, it's normal. I mean, $1,000 is still a lot, but it's not $4,000. Which means, and there are so many examples, AccuPhase, oh my God, I mean, they're just doubling, tripling sometimes what the price of Japan. And sometimes it's marketing in order to make something, a little more luxurious, a little more out of hand for somebody. And in other cases, it's just to earn darn money because people don't know. They know they have a great name, and so they can ask a little more. They're not going to ask those prices in their own nation or their own country, but outside, oh boy, a lot of people do. So again, that's going to increase the price tag in most cases. And I don't think that's very nice, because there should be an equal exchange rate. In other cases, we do have a different price for the other motivations I said: custom duties, taxes, importation, different steps in the distribution. At that point, obviously, we're going to have an increase. But that's rarely the case, I would say. Let's proceed. Point number 4, well, something obvious and simple: overpricing, default overpricing. High-end companies just decide whatever is the expenses, the profit, let's just add another 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, because it has to be that way. High-end has to be very expensive, unfortunately. And this philosophy is really killing the hi-fi economy, the hi-fi community, the hi-fi passion. Please stop. Let's proceed. Point number 5, obviously, we already mentioned this along the road: luxury items. There is the decision to make it not available to everyone, and hence we're gonna just add $10,000 there, and that happens in several components, in several labels, companies. The whole production is just 5-10 times what is the actual cost, plus obviously profit, plus obviously research and development and all the things we said before. They're just going to double and triple that, because there are, unfortunately, people, and that's a problem, who are just ready to open their little wallet to pay those incredible and absurd and crazy, insane prices. And unfortunately, every time we do that, we're helping that type of approach. Okay, so now that we have discussed a little bit of all the different aspects connected to prices, I want to give you my take on this, my experience, what happened. Well, very simple. Maybe you have noticed that in the last videos, I have been buying, using, testing high-end equipment, okay? A few things I still have to present them because I have, for example, a new amplifier, a new preamplifier, a new phono preamp of high level, which is going to be presented and reviewed in the next videos. In any case, apart from that, as you know, the turntable, which is not this one, now I moved it for a few days, the Kuzma, but also the cartridge, also the speakers of the Golden Ear. I mean, there's lots of components that I have buying besides from other analog stuff like tape recorders, Studer, Nagra in the past, things like that obviously are extremely expensive and are considered high-end audio. In my opinion, from what I have experienced, I can say that in most cases, high-end equipment does not bring that leap in quality that you would expect. You would expect a lot. I mean, it should be proportional. Now, it's true that it's something I already said in other videos. In order to achieve, when you're already at a high level, in order to achieve an extra step, you do not need a proportional amount of energy, money, resources to gain that step. When you're already at a high level, that extra step costs a lot. Almost, we could say, 1/3 of what came before. This is just to give you an idea of what's taking place in a high-end component. So I understand that when you're pushing the boundaries, there is a high increase in price. But if you're pushing the boundaries, I want to have an increase in quality. And this is not taking place, in my opinion, in my most humble opinion, in a lot of components. And I said this in several things. For example, the turntable. For example, the my Holo Audio Maidac, or other things, the Lida Cleos. I mean, those are extremely expensive components. And I do like them a lot, absolutely, and I'm going to keep them. But I must be objective that they are too expensive, in my opinion. No question about it. The only elements of a hi-fi system where I think it is really worth investing that good amount of money besides what you normally spend is mainly distributed in 3 parts. In my opinion, okay? This is not objective, but I think that you really sense a difference and it's worth spending your money in speakers when you spend a lot. It's incredible the things that a high quality speaker can do. The amplifier, oh yes baby. And obviously I would say also the media. I mean, high quality vinyl, audiophile editions, like for example Analog Productions. They cost a lot, especially here in Europe. But they do pay off. I mean, it is something at another level. In those 3 cases, I think it's worth it. Otherwise, nada gazawa. Okay, this was my take on this. I just want to mention 3 things we could do to somehow try to kill this practice, but obviously it's impossible to do. Nevertheless, I think there are positive attitudes that we can adopt. Well, first of all, it's something good to do, in my opinion, to try to reward somehow, to buy, obviously, but not only, to talk about quality components that have a good price range. I mean, this is obvious, but if we start doing this, purchasing that, and also giving the idea to other people, inform them, this in fact is another part of the job, I would say. Be informed, because we have to gain knowledge on different things, not only reviews in high famous magazines, but also in forums, which also pay attention to the forums. I know people of labels, of houses, of companies go there and write your stuff, so always pay attention, also in that case. And inform ourselves and inform other people of good quality components that have a good price. That's something we can do. And obviously we can also buy used or ex-demo or things like that. And obviously that's already going to try to lower a little bit these high prices. Again, it's something unstoppable as in every type of luxury item. But it doesn't have to be luxury, because pure luxury is that. Luxury, something very expensive with expensive materials. But we're talking about hi-fi, and in a lot of cases, high-end audio does have high-quality stuff inside and high-quality results. And that's why it's really a pity to see that this approach is contaminating, polluting, and killing our passion towards high fidelity. Thank you. Bye, guys. And remember, please write down your comments. This has to be a discussion. This is a dialogue, as you know, and I'm very interested in knowing your opinion on this. Apart from all of this, remember that music was born analog. Ciao. Well, guys, if you're enjoying my videos and you're enjoying my channel, please consider to subscribe by clicking the black and white logo here below. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode and you will become a true member of the analog community.